So now we come to a very interesting concept of microorganisms, whether they are friends or enemies, friends or foe. So let us delve into this concept and try and understand that what are the benefits and harms associated with microorganisms in general. It is a notion that whenever you talk about microorganisms, the first thing that comes to our mind is risks associated with it. That all of the microorganisms are dangerous because they may cause infections. But that's not really true. Of course, there are microorganisms which cause deadly infections, which is life-threatening, and also can lead to loss, commercial loss, because it is also responsible for spoilage, food spoilage specifically. But all microorganisms are not dangerous. All of them are not infectious. There are some which are really beneficial to us. We are no way trying to refute the fact that microorganisms have risks associated to them because they can cause infections or there could be commercial losses. But at the same time, we need to identify and appreciate the benefits that we have from these tiny creatures. So let us see what are the benefits that are associated. India has a very rich history of fermented food. Idli dosa batter, the bread that we consume, the dokla that we consume, several pickles, all are fermented food products. Distilleries, alcohol producing factories, are basically following fermentation process. Fermentation is basically activity that is carried out by microorganisms, which is giving us these products that we are consuming. I am not getting into the details of technicalities of fermentation because I know that the audience here is also from non-science background. But microbial activity is very significant for most of the food and distillery-based industries. Let me also tell you that the antibiotics that are available in the market, which is basically given for treatment of infectious diseases, that also comes from microorganisms only. Bacteria or fungi are known for their ability to produce antimicrobial products. They produce these chemicals to compete with each other. There is a competition between all organisms. Even microorganisms compete with each other. During this process, they produce chemicals to kill their opponent, their competitors. And that is exactly what is utilized as therapeutic products for treatment purposes. So antibiotics are basically produced by microorganisms themselves, which we have been using for therapy since ages. Similarly, microorganisms are also used as factories because they can produce therapeutically important products in large quantities in less amount of time. For example, we all know that diabetic patients, they are given insulin shots to keep their blood sugar level under control. This insulin is produced by microorganisms where we have inserted human insulin gene in these organisms, and we are now able to produce human insulin in tons together in a very less amount of time. All thanks to microorganisms and the scientists who have made this possible. Several microorganisms are also considered as a source of food. Like during fungi, we discussed about mushrooms. There is also spirulina, which is a very rich source of proteins, which is very popular as a food supplement. So several microorganisms, including some algae, are considered as food. Let me tell you that all algae or fungi are not edible. Some of them are toxic and are lethal. So we have to be very careful about these aspects because that can be very dangerous. Microorganisms are easy to cultivate and hence have become apt platforms for research purposes as well. There are several concepts in biology which have been studied in microorganisms and then extrapolated to higher organisms like plants and animals. And finally, microorganisms have been used for environmental purposes as well. There are several environmental issues like oil spills, plastic pollution, water pollution, which we are trying to control using microorganisms. There are several microbial species which can have the ability to degrade toxic chemicals and purify our water bodies. There are microorganisms which can degrade oil and clear out oil spills. There are also species which have the ability to degrade plastic. This shows how significant microorganisms are to deal with some of the environmental challenges that have become grilling in today's time. Ultimately, it depends on us to weigh out the benefits versus the harm. We have to identify which microorganisms can be harnessed for beneficial purposes and which organisms we have to be careful about. So it is ultimately about weighing out the benefits versus the harm. As far as this module is concerned, we discussed about different kinds of microorganisms, the harms and benefits associated with them, and also we tried to understand how important it is to weigh the benefit versus the harm. In the next and the last video for this week, we will be discussing about the world of infections in general. Till then, stay tuned.